Olympic weightlifting coach course. So the objectives of this module are to understand the definition of the snatch for weightlifting purposes, to discuss protocols for teaching the power snatch top-down versus ground-up approach, and to understand some of the common errors and related correctional drills. So the snatch is defined by the IWF that the barbell is placed horizontally in front of the lifter's legs. It is gripped, palms downwards, and pulled in a single movement from the platform to the full extent of both arms above the head, while either splitting or bending the legs. During this continuous movement, the barbell may slide along the thighs and the lap. No part of the body other than the feet may touch the platform. Now with the snatch, there's a high degree of muscle activation in the snatch, from forearm muscles for grip to the deep stabilizing muscles of the ankle, hip and shoulder. The snatch challenges your muscles to work in a combined and synchronized way. So it involves both slower strength-biased muscle recruitment all the way through to power and fast motor unit facilitation. So snatch styles. Well, there are two main styles to the snatch, whether catching with a parallel stance, which is what we see with the squat snatch or power snatch, or utilised in a split stance position, which we'll refer to as a split snatch. There are also many smaller style variations amongst elite lifters of how wide to have their feet, how externally rotated the legs are, etc. And usually the feet are around about hip distance or less apart for the first pull, with a wider stance for the catch phase. So here we see the snatch in slow-mo, just recapping the phases. So obviously key setup, shoulders over or in front of the bar, everything's nice and braced. It's a nice wide hook grip. And then we have the first pull where the bar is moving, and the idea with that phase is to get the bar moving to overcome inertia. Then once the bar goes past the knees, we see our double knee bend or the re-knee bending. The hips are pushed forward, the knees are pushed forward, shoulders pulled back, the bar will brush against the thighs. Then into our second pull where we do our jump and shrug, where we have our maximum force production. And then the pull under, where we commonly will shift our feet apart in preparation for the catch, pull ourselves actively under the bar in preparation to catch the bar overhead with the arms locked. We catch it then in this deep overhead squat position, stabilize the load, and then for the recovery, push through the floor and the bar, extending the hips and the feet to come up into a standing position. So let's go through some of the key coaching points for each phase. Now obviously you wouldn't want to brain dump all of these onto a lifter, particularly when they're kind of learning, but these are the key things that you kind of should be looking at with each phase to just try and ensure optimal technique. So for the setup, the bar should be over the end of the shoelaces roughly, arms extended, elbows rotated out, hips should be higher than the knees, chest should be up, core should be braced, shoulders should be over or in front of the bar, feet flat, weight on the midfoot, you should take the slack off the bar, and obviously it should be a wide snatch hook grip. For the first pull, bar's going to move towards the shins, the arms are going to still be extended so we shouldn't see the elbows bending, knees should extend backwards, we should see the torso angle remain the same, so the hip to shoulder angle. Shoulders should remain over or in front of the bar. Feet should be flat. Weight now shifts onto the heels backwards. And there should be a slow to moderate speed, so we're not trying to rip the bar from the floor. For the transition phase, the bar is going to pass the knees. The arms are going to still remain extended. The hips are going to move forward. The shoulders are going to move backwards, the knees are going to re-bend and move forwards, and the bar is going to continue to move upwards. For the second pull, the hips and knees extend violently. You come up onto the toes as if you're performing a jump, so this is where we get our triple extension, and we're going to shrug violently upwards. You're going to extend the body upwards or backwards, depending on your kind of individual style. For the pull under then, as the bar's moving upwards, you're going to allow the arms to bend with the elbows out, and you're going to actively pull the body straight downwards. At this point, from being up on your toes on the second pull, you can also then look to shift your feet apart for a wider catch position. For the catch, you're going to lock the arms, start pushing upwards against the bar and push forcibly into the floor with the legs. Chest is up and you're looking forwards. And then for the recovery, pushing upwards to a standing position and focus on keeping the hips forward during this ascent. So if we teach the snatch utilising the top-down approach, then the first part of the lift that needs to be learnt is the recovery. So the recovery is the point of the lift where the bar has been caught with the elbows locked out, and the best exercise in order to learn this is going to be the overhead squat. So a key limiting factor in the snatch will be the maximum load, which will be able to overhead squat. So if you can't do an overhead squat with 50 kilos, then it's highly unlikely you're going to be able to do a snatch with 50 kilos, since you're not going to be able to catch and actually stand up using that weight. So recovery drills, as we said, would include one of the major ones, the overhead squat. You could also include the behind the neck press, and then the overhead squat, then behind the neck press. And we've kind of shown you each of these drills previously in the kind of preparation exercises, so we won't spend too much time repeating ourselves. Now, recovery errors. So one of the errors you'll see, not locking the arms out. So this puts additional stress on the triceps and also deltoids, and then cause the arms to fatigue, so much so that the bar has the potential to fall on top of the lifter. So you need to ensure that the arms, particularly at the elbow joint, is locked out throughout the recovery phase. Another error then is going to be the hips rising prematurely, and this will cause the centre of mass to move forward, potentially causing the bar to fall in front or requiring the lifter to step forward in order to compensate and move yourself back under the bar. And we'll show you a quick video so you can see what this looks like. So here we have a couple of elite lifters, and it is forgivable just simply because they are using maximum loads. But the key thing to focus on here is in that bottom catch position, particularly when we're watching slow-mo, you'll watch how the hips rise up first, and this is what causes centre of mass to shift forward, and you see then they then have to step forward in order to get themselves back under the bar. On both lifters, you're going to see the same thing happening. If you can keep your hips forward, then you're not going to see that. Like I said, this is forgivable because they are kind of using maximum loads, and as long as they get the lift up, that's the most important thing for them. But yeah, we want to try to avoid these hips rising prematurely because it forces you to lean further forward through the torso. The weight then shifts in front of your feet, and then you have to step forward to regain that control. So the catch phase of the snatch is one of the hardest to teach. It is in essence a very small portion of the lift, and usually requires at least the ability to form the second pull and pull under phases of the lift. It is for this reason that the snatch balance becomes a great exercise in learning how to competently and confidently lock out the elbows and maintain a strong shoulder position that allows for the bar to be controlled and secured in place for the catch. So again, we've gone through the kind of snatch balance a few times. It is pretty much the key. So for the catch and linking into the recovery, it's quite difficult to do the catch without the recovery. So catch and recovery drills, again, the overhead squat is in there. The snatch balance obviously teaches us the recovery, but it really helps us to kind of learn how to drop down quickly, shift our feet into an optimal catch position, lock the arms out, and do that all at speed. And there are a couple of variations of the snatch balance. You can do what people refer to as a drop snatch balance. So you may start off on your toes, again, bar is on the back, and then what you do is you just shift your feet apart and drop straight into it. And what this does is as soon as you start to move, then the bar is going to start falling towards the ground. So it kind of forces you to do it really quickly. So if you find someone that's a little bit slow doing the snatch balance, and the drop snatch balance kind of encourages them to do it much quicker. We also have what is referred to as a kind of heaving snatch balance. We tend to use this when we've got a little bit more load, and this is pretty much the technique that we've already shown you. this is where we start with the bar on the back and we do a little dip and drive to get the bar moving upwards. So that's what you would tend to use if you are using. So errors with the catch. Well, one of the main errors being too relaxed upon landing. So you must be rigid through the upper body and the core to effectively transmit force from the lower body in order to decelerate the bar. Actively focus on pushing up through the bar on the descent, and then with the lower body strongly pushing through the floor on the landing should help to assist this. You can go a little bit OTT, but with kind of an excessive stamp, but really kind of planting your feet solidly into the ground and pushing through the ground can help if a lifter is a bit too relaxed. Another error, which we'll show you with the video in a second, is jumping forward under the bar. And this is due to the bar trajectory being off, the bar being too far forward, and this causes the lifter to have to step, or in this case jump forward, to realign the bar over their base of support over their feet. Keeping the bar closer to the body on the first pull and extending the body back on the second pull should also help to correct this. So here we see this. So if you just focus on his feet, and he does miss the lifts, so don't worry about that so much, but what you're looking at here is every kind of time, look at where his feet start off, he is having to jump forward. And it does make it very difficult. I mean, it's a very small margin of error as that bar comes up. It only needs to be a few inches forward or backwards for you to have a missed lift. And you make it a lot more difficult by trying to jump into the correct position at the same time as kind of lifting the bar. So it does make it technically a lot more difficult to perform. And like we said, commonly due to either not fully extending through the second pull or not pulling the bar towards you on the first pull. So once the initial catch and recovery phases have been learnt through the overhead squat and snatch balance predominantly, it is time to learn how to generate the force to lift the bar above the head. Although the next phase down is the pull under, it's not possible to learn this phase without learning first how to do the second pull. So when learning Olympic weightlifting, it's prudent to start by learning from the high hang positions so as not to complicate the lift. And from this above the knee position, we can isolate the learning to just the second pull. So once this is mastered, we can then add the pull under or the first pull to transition to either end or start respectively. So effectively we're just going to focus on learning the second pull, and then if we want to do second pull and pull under, or if we want to just do the transition to second pull, you can kind of go either which way. So for the second pull, in order to get to the point where enough power is produced to perform the pull under phase, it is easier to break the second pull down into learning how to reinforce the triple joint extension with a power shrug from the high hang position. So this involves slowing the bar partway down the thighs and then forcibly extending the hips and knees whilst coming up onto the toes of the feet and powerfully shrugging the bar upwards using the traps. So what we do initially is we keep the arms locked at the elbows during this exercise, so the emphasis can be placed in the lower body synchronization with that shoulder elevation. So we're not kind of worried about the elbows bending. We'll kind of save that till once we've mastered this triple extension and scapular elevation. So the second pull drills that we're going to do are going to be this snatch power shrug. So the power shrug is we do the triple extension of the lower body and the shrug, but we keep the arms bent. The high pulls, we do the same thing, but we allow the arms to bend upwards. And there's a couple of different variations of that, which we'll discuss. These can then be progressed into the kind of muscle snatch, which we'll show you in a little bit later as well. So power shrug from the high hang. So we do a little dip down, and then it's effectively jump and shrug. You come up onto your toes, extension of the knee, extension of the hip, and a strong elevation straight upwards. And as you can see, the arms are kept straight at the elbows. So we're just trying to transmit that force and generate all the force through the lower body and through the upper trapezius. Now we'll show you high pulls. This variation, we're actually doing it from a dead start position. So we kind of set up some blocks in this same kind of high hang position. but there's no preloading now, so it's like a dead high pull. And again, we do that same jump and shrug, and then you're just allowing the elbows to bend, and we can kind of hold that top position, or you can start to drop your body down like we will do for the pull under. Kind of depends which slight variation you prefer to use. So after learning to execute a good triple extension with a powerful shoulder shrug, the next stage is to learn how to produce enough vertical displacement so the bar travels higher. And this is done by allowing the arms to bend and the bar to come up to the high pull position around about chest, head level. As the pull under phase is needed to be integrated into this lift, an adapted high pull is used where the lifter dips the hips and knees down in readiness to pull fully under the bar to get into this catch position. So if you just do a high pull, then you pretty much hold that triple extension position. The adapted high pull, as you see, what we do here is as we complete the triple extension, the shrug then almost starts to help us to start pulling ourselves back underneath as if we're changing direction as the bar's moving upwards. So we do our triple extension, we do our shrug, we allow the arms to bend, and that arm bending is partly to allow the bar to come up further, but more so it's focusing on helping us to pull the body underneath the bar as it travels in the opposite direction. Common second pull errors going to include not extending the hips and knees fully, so it's critical to achieve full extension of both the knees and hips in order to generate maximal force during the second pull. Restrictions in the hip flexors may inhibit hip extension, but mobilization work should sort that out. So it's usually a technical fault if you're not seeing this full extension occurring. Another error may be insufficient or poor timing of the shrug. So when do you want to kind of complete the shrug? Well, the shrug should occur just before the completion of the knee and hip extension, so as to add force to the upwards moving bar. It should be pure shoulder elevation, no rotation, and it should be explosive. And like I said, you can kind of argue that the shrug, as much as anything, may pull the bar upwards, which is what we see with the second pull, but it can also be involved in actively pulling the body downwards, which is what we see with the pull under. So it kind of can be described as a bit of a link between these two distinct phases. So we can do a second pull muscle snatch, and in the initial learning stages it can be useful to not have to worry about the catch and recovery element of the lift, and therefore often the exercise known as the muscle snatch is used to integrate the second pull with the bar travelling fully overhead. So you're not really going to get a pull under with this one, but the muscle snatch occurs when there's no knee or hip bend underneath the bar. So in essence, bar is caught overhead, so you lift it up a lot higher with the knees and hips kind of fully locked out. So here we see the kind of muscle snatch being performed from a kind of high hang position. We do our jump and shrug. And it can be more of kind of a rotation to kind of finish off and a little bit slower, or we can kind of do it quite quickly and just kind of catch it overhead. Again, different people will kind of describe the exercise in slightly different ways. If anything, they're just small style variations depending on what you're really looking at trying to get out. We may want to do it slower in order to kind of emphasize the musculature and kind of develop a little bit more. And then what can work quite well is to then integrate that muscle snatch with an overhead squat. So what we do is kind of muscle snatch it above the head, and then from that top position then add a overhead squat. So we're keeping them distinctly separate, but we're starting to integrate, okay, we're going to lift the bar up and then we're going to drop down into an overhead squat. So we're not, again, we don't get the pull under phase here, but we're starting to make the exercise a little bit more complex. Again, it's a slower velocity, but it's a good little kind of distinct teaching drill to help people start to get used to what they're going to need to do. So power snatch from high hang. So once the preceding exercises have been mastered, i.e. you can do an adapted high pull, you can do a snatch balance, you've probably done a muscle snatch to overhead squat, then you really want to be looking at bringing them together. And now it's then time to actually attempt the full power snatch from a high hang position. And this, as obviously should be described, is going to bring in the second pull, pull under, catch and recovery phases all into one single exercise. So here we see the kind of power snatch from a high hang position. Start pull extended, you do a little dip down. It's a jump and shrug upwards, pull ourselves downwards underneath the bar, shift our feet outwards into an optimal catch position, stand up. And again, we can then, we can only drop down into a partial overhead squat, so you don't have to dip down too much. And then we can start playing around with how high we're lifting the bar and then how low we're actually dropping into that overhead squat catch position. And people can kind of play around and see what they feel comfortable with then. So pull under errors will include not actively pulling the body downwards. So the pull under must be an active process. If you're passively just allowing gravity to take you down into the overhead squat position, it's going to be too slow and the bar will already be dropping too low before you get to the right place. So the shrug can be viewed, as we mentioned earlier, as an important kind of link to start pulling the body down as much as for lifting the bar upwards. One of the other errors we see is not adjusting the foot position, and although not absolutely essential, most individuals will shift the feet, either rotating out or widening the stance or both, in preparation for the catch position. Trying to catch in a narrower lifting stance will usually inevitably lead to difficulties in the kind of catch. Now there are different exercise variations and you don't have to kind of shift your feet apart. And we do go through some of these kind of variations in the advanced weightlifting workshop. Now a really good way of reinforcing each phase that we're trying to master is to use a 3-rep complex. And this involves doing the power shrug followed by the adapted high pull and then into the power snatch. So you do 3 reps, 1 shrug, 1 high pull and then 1 power snatch, and you kind of do them one after the other, and then you may call an end to that set, or you may kind of repeat that same kind of little complex. And in essence, what we're trying to do is each preceding rep primes the body into the next repetition. So what we do is you do a power shrug where we do our triple extension and shrug, and then when we kind of go into the high pull, hopefully you should repeat all those same things, but just add on the arm bend and then the drop as well. When we do the power snatch, again, we're trying to just get the body going. Well, you've already done this, just add that little bit to the end, and it does usually help to improve the technical ability of the body. So in essence, as we said, each preceding rep primes the body into the next rep and means that more of the technical elements of the full power snatch are worked on with each rep, allowing for greater feedback and greater reinforcement. Onto the transition phase. So having learned how to power snatch from the high hang, then the next stage, if we're going downwards, is to learn how to move through the transition phase into the second pull and then completing the power shrug. So much like the learning that was used to complete the power shrug from the high hang, easiest way to learn how to add the transition into the lift is to integrate through transition into the second pull and then completing the power shrug. So this can be done by starting at knee hang and then moving downwards into the kind of low hang position. So effectively what we do is kind of follow the same kind of procedure. You do this transition into power shrug, transition into high pull, and then transitioning into the full power snatch. So drills to teach the transition would include the adapted or altered Romanian deadlift, and then adding some of the standard things onto the end of that, the power shrug and the high pull. You could also perform snatch power shrug from kind of knee height blocks. You're doing it from a dead start position rather than lowering the bar down. And again, same kind of thing, do a snatch high pull again from that dead start position. Set at kind of knee height so we can add this little transition phase into it, but pretty much just following the same procedure of learning drills that we So I've shown you this previously, but just the adapted Romanian deadlift. You're taking the bar down to kind of just past the knee, but as you come up, we're going to do our transition phase. So you're going to push the hips forward, pull the shoulders back, knees come forward, and what you're kind of looking for is rather than doing a Romanian deadlift where you just come up into a standing position, we're doing effectively a Romanian deadlift with the transition phase integrated within it. And then the kind of adapted Romanian deadlift shrug, power shrug, we do the same kind of thing, dropping it down to about knee or just past the knee, pushing the knees forward, and then kind of adding either a slow shrug and calf raise, which is absolutely fine, or kind of doing it quicker and going straight into the power shrug, which is obviously more of a velocity-based drill, and a little bit more applicable to what we're actually going to be doing during the lift. But either are both perfectly acceptable drills, either slow version or this quick version. Transition errors, well, key one, bar being too far away from the thighs, and this will mean that there won't be any brush against the thighs or the hip crease, which is important kinesthetic feedback for a lifter. It also means that the bar is probably moving too far horizontally, commonly fixed by having the bar focus on pulling the bar towards them on the first pull, but we can also get them to actively focus on pulling it towards them during the transition phase as well. Other errors during the transition, no double knee bend, and the double knee bend is critical for maximum force generation. In the short term, a lifter may well be able to lift a weight above their head, but if you're not really seeing a double knee bend, then it will limit their success or their ability to progress in the long term. So it is better to learn the most efficient technique in the early stages, even if it does take a lifter a little longer to get their head around. And then if we're following a top-down approach, the final phase then would be the first pull. And adequate strength, and it does require a lot of strength, and obviously correct technique in the first pull is critical for success, and poor bar trajectory in this phase can lead to kind of irreparable problems later on in the lift, i.e. things that you can't kind of fix later on. And even if you can fix them, then you're probably wasting more energy correcting faults from the first pull, when you should be able to kind of allocate that energy to just getting the bar higher or dropping yourself down quicker. So for example, pulling the bar forwards on the first pull rather than bringing it kind of vertical or towards you will make it nearly impossible to achieve a brush on the thighs during the transition or second pull phase. Or if you do pull it forwards, then you're probably going to have to waste a fair bit of energy trying to bring it back towards you during the transition. Thus, as we mentioned before, learners will not get that kinesthetic feedback, despite the fact that they are actually getting the double knee bend. The bar trajectory is going to be too far forward in relation to their body or their thighs, and they're not going to get that brush. So first pull errors or common errors. One is going to be the hips rising too quickly. So this will load the spine more. It will also decrease the force that's being transferred to the bar. So we want to coach to keep this hip to shoulder angle or the torso angle the same, and get them to focus not on lifting the weight but pushing the floor away from them. The other error we tend to see is not keeping the shoulders over the bar. Again, usually due to weak erector spinae muscles, so the lifter tries to pull the torso into a more vertical position in order to decrease that stress. And this is where optimal, really good posterior chain strength is massively important to get a good first pull. So you'd look to strengthen with exercises like the Romanian deadlift, first pull deadlift, good mornings, kettlebell swings, and then look to integrate that strength and re-coach them how to do it correctly. And as we've already mentioned, bar moving forward, so the bar should move vertically or ideally towards the body during the first pull. If the bar moves forwards, then it's likely going to be too far forward during the transition, and you're not going to get that brush against the thighs. So drills specifically focus on the first pull, so we have this snatch grip, first pull deadlift, or we can do the same, adding a double knee bend, and then eventually progressing into a snatch power shrug from the ground. So that snatch power shrug, we're going to be obviously integrating the first pull transition and into the second pull, but then not having to worry about the pull under, catch or recovery phases. And the first pull deadlift, although it's a hard exercise to do, is really good for strengthening the erector spinae and hamstring muscles. So we're just looking at pulling the bar to about kind of knee height. If you want to really make it harder as well, then you can increase the kind of pause, so you can actually kind of hold that top position for 1, 2, 3 seconds, and that will really overload those muscles at the same time as well. But it's a good drill, like I said, just to kind of get you used to strengthening this particular phase of the exercise. And then once you can do all of those, then we should be ready to attempt our power snatch from the ground. So everything we've just kind of covered, but you're just going to be catching the bar in a partial overhead squat position. Like I said, if we really drill down all those exercises we've kind of taught you or gone through previously, then once we start integrating it into the full lift from the ground, it is a lot easier. You try and do this too early and you haven't really developed those motor engrams. So spend time really working on each of the individual phases, and it does make it a lot easier in the long run. So if we're following a top-down coaching model, then you've got the kind of two things you're looking at, the kind of start progression and the exercise progression. So from the exercise progression, we're kind of always doing a power shrug, then progressing into the adapted or just high pull, and then progressing into the power snatch. From the start progression, then we'd go through those 3 exercises, starting off at the high hang and then moving downwards to the mid hang or knees, to the low hang, and then eventually to the floor. So if you're doing as a kind of pure top-down coaching model, that's the way we'd kind of progress it. High hang power shrug into high hang adapted high pull into high hang power snatch. And then we go back to the power shrug, but go lower down. Then we do the same 3 exercises from the mid hang, same 3 exercises from the low hang, and then eventually same 3 exercises from the ground. Now the bottom up or ground up coaching model will approach it from the other end of the spectrum. So we'd start off with our first pull deadlift and then add the double knee bend to that, and then effectively then add the jump and shrug, which we would just call a power shrug from the ground. Then progressing into the adapted high pull, and then eventually into the power snatch from the ground. Which is better as a kind of an area of contention. You kind of say you don't always have to do it as a pure, or we start from the top and work downwards, or we start from the bottom and work upwards. No reason at all why you can't be working on the snatch balance for the catch and recovery, the power shrug for the second pull, and then first pull deadlift, all within one of the earlier sessions as you're kind of teaching someone how to do the snatch. And then, like we said, progressing it over a period of time and gradually stitching these different phases together. So with the style variations, well, there are many different style variations ranging from grip width to foot width, hip external rotation, how much hip extension you may be getting as well. And some of these will be decided by an individual's biomechanics, and some will be adapted in order to improve performance once basic techniques have been learnt. As long as the technique guidelines are adhered to, small variations in style are not nearly as important in the initial stages of learning weightlifting. So you should complete the review questions for this module to ensure you've met the learning outcomes, and then complete the guided practice. You should practice the exercises first, so you're happy with the techniques, and then practice teaching the techniques to a couple of colleagues, so you can practice both explaining and coaching the exercises. Once you've completed the guided practice, then move on to the next module.